Trinadapi Sunichena Tarad Iva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Hare Nama Hare Nama Hare Nama Evakivalam Kalo Nastyeva 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 Gatiranyata. This class is dedicated to the transcendental couple Manjari and Vidura Mehta. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nectar of Devotion by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-vedanta Swami, Śrīla Prabhupāda. Chapter 17, Ecstatic Love. And this very first paragraph, for me, is very, very nice and instructive. By the process of executing a regulated devotional service, one is actually elevated onto the transcendental stage, beyond the material modes of nature. At that time, one's heart becomes illuminated like the sun. The sun is far above the planetary systems, and there is no possibility of its being covered by any kind of cloud. Similarly, when a devotee is purified like the sun, from his pure heart there is a diffusion of ecstatic love, which is more glorious than the sunshine. Only at that time is the attachment to Krishna perfect. So why is this so important to me? Because this is exactly how I saw Śrīla Prabhupāda for the very first time. This is exactly the description of how Prabhupada looked. And he looked like this many times. So this to me reminds me of that first vision. Let us continue. Spontaneously, the devotee becomes eager to serve the Lord in his ecstatic love. At this stage, the devotee is on the platform of Uttama Adhikari, perfect devotion. So this excerpt is also instructive to me, and because Prabhupada says that one should select as one's spiritual master an Uttama Adhikari. So I'm nowhere near this description. So that's why I don't initiate disciples, because I'm not an Uttama Adhikari as described here. And therefore, don't wait around. Find yourself an Uttama Adhikari. Such a devotee has no agitation from material affections and is interested only in the service of Radha and Krishna. To clarify, in the previous chapters, the symptoms of devotional service were explained along with instructions as to how we may execute devotional service with our present senses and gradually rise to the platform of ecstasy in spontaneous love. And the two kinds of devotional service, namely devotional service through regulated principles and through spontaneous love, were discussed. Within the stage of regulative principles of devotional service, there are two divisions, namely executive and effective. This effective portion of devotional service is called bhava, or ecstasy. In this connection, there is a statement in the tantras that ecstasy is the first symptom of pure love for the personality of Godhead. And in that stage, one is sometimes found shedding tears or shivering. Not always are these symptoms manifest, but occasionally. When King Ambarish was put into difficulty by Durvasa, he began to think of the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus there were some changes in his body, and tears were falling from his eyes. These symptoms are activities of ecstasy. So those who recall that incident between Ambarish and Durvasa, Ambarish showed himself to be a better transcendentalist than Durvasa. Durvasa was very proud, and he was so angry with Ambarish. Why? Because Ambarish had to break the Ekadasi fast, but he cannot eat before his guest eats. Ambarish had come, and Durvasa had come, and it's described that Durvasa was such a sage. He would come to somebody's place unannounced. He would just show up, and sometimes he would come late at night and say, "Now you must feed me." So he was very unpredictable. So Durvasa was a little envious of Ambarish. So he was looking for some fault. So Ambarish had to break the fast. He consulted the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas said, so drinking water is simultaneously breaking the fast, and it's also not breaking the fast. So take the water. So Ambarish, on the advice of the Brahmins, drank some water. But Durvasa, mystic yogi as he is, he could detect, you have eaten before me. So he was looking for an excuse. So therefore he plucked hair and created a demon. But Ambarish stood there, not disturbed. And what did Krishna do? He sent Sudarshan Chakra to kill the demon and then chase the perpetrator, Durvasa. Because we know from the Bhagavad Gita, Kontiya pratajanihi name bhakta pranasyati. My devotee does not become perished. And Ambarish was great devotee. In the Bhagavatam it said that Ambarish was doing all 9 kinds of devotional service. He was doing everything. And there was the description in that section how he would see the Lord, how he would do everything as a king in Krishna consciousness. So that Sudarshan Chakra chased Durvasa. He went everywhere seeking protection, but nobody could give him protection, not even his origin, Lord Shiva, because Durvasa is partial expansion of Lord Shiva, being the son of Atri Rishi. So he is partial expansion, but Lord Brahma couldn't save him, Lord Shiva couldn't save him. And when he went to Narayan, Narayan said, I can't do anything. The devotees are my heart, and I am in the heart of my devotees. I don't know anybody else. In other words, Durvasa, you're not a devotee. So Narayan told him, you want to be saved? Go back to my devotee, beg forgiveness, then Sudarshan will leave you alone. So Durvasa went, and this was a whole year, and Ambarish was still waiting. For 1 year he was waiting there, fasting, waiting for Durvasa to come back. And the picture is there, Durvasa stretched out, touching his feet, and the painting you see Ambarish telling Sudarshan Chakra, stop. Then they became friends, and Durvasa realized, yes, the devotees of Narayan, they are most exalted. Let us continue. These symptoms are activities of ecstasy. They are visible in the shivering of the body and the shedding of tears. After the outward appearance of these ecstatic symptoms, they stay within the mind, and continuation of the ecstasy is called samadhi. This stage of appreciation becomes the cause of future exchanges of loving affairs with Krishna. Elevation to this stage of ecstasy can be possible in two ways. One way is by constant association with pure devotees, and the other way is by the special mercy of Krishna or by the mercy of a pure devotee of Krishna. Elevation to the ecstatic stage of life is generally attained through association with pure devotees, while elevation to that stage by the special mercy of Krishna or his devotee is very rare. So this gives us an idea why Prabhupada created the International Society. We need the association of other devotees to help us become enlivened, to become encouraged, to become enthused. And I personally take that as my service, to encourage, enliven, and enthuse devotees. That's how we have tried to do this Namahat since 1994. We have tried to do that. The purport is that one should execute devotional service rigidly in the association of devotees, so that there will be certainty in raising oneself to that ecstatic position. In special cases, of course, there is special favor from Krishna. And although we should always expect that, we should not sit idly and simply wait for Krishna's special mercy. The regular duties must be performed. It is just as when sometimes it is found that a person who never attended school or college may be recognized as a great scholar, or an honorary degree from great universities may be offered to him. But this does not mean that one should avoid school and expect to automatically receive an honorary degree from some university. Similarly, one should devoutly execute the regulative principles of devotional service and at the same time hope for Krishna's favor or for his devotees' favor. An example of rising to the stage of ecstatic love by executing the regulative principles of devotional service is given in the life story of Narada, which is described to Vyasadeva in Srimad Bhagavatam. Narada tells there of his previous life and how he developed to the stage of ecstatic love. He was engaged in the service of great devotees, and he used to hear their talks and songs. Actually, he was only 5 years old at the time. Because he had the opportunity to hear these pastimes and songs of Krishna from the mouths of pure devotees, he became very attracted within his heart. Because he had become so eager to hear these topics, he gradually developed within himself an ecstatic love for Krishna. This ecstatic love is prior to the pure love of Krishna, because in the next verse, Narada confirms that by the gradual process of hearing from the great sages, he developed love of Godhead. In that connection, Narada continues to say in the first canto, 5th chapter, verse 28 of the Bhagavatam, and I looked up that Sanskrit verse. Itang sharat praveshvak ritu harer Vrishrinvato me nunusabang yasho malam Sankirtyamanang munibir mahatmabir Bhakti pravittatma rajastamopaha. First I passed my days in the association of the great sages during the rainy autumn season. Every morning and evening I heard them while they were singing and chanting the Hare Krishna mantra, and thus my heart gradually became purified. As soon as I heard them with great attention, the influence of the modes of material ignorance and passion disappeared, and I became firmly fixed in devotional service to the Lord. These are practical examples of how one can develop to the stage of ecstatic love simply by the association of pure devotees. It is essential, therefore, that one constantly associate with pure devotees who are engaged morning and evening in chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. In this way, one will get the chance to purify his or her heart and develop this ecstatic pure love for Krishna. This statement is also confirmed in the 3rd canto, 25th chapter, verse 25 of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Lord Kapila says, Satang prasangan mama virya sangvido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana katha taj joshanad ashva varga vartmani Sraddha ratir bhaktir anukramisyati. My dear mother, what's her name? Anybody? Devahuti. When a person is actually in association with pure devotees, the sublime potency of my devotional service can be experienced. In other words, when a pure devotee speaks, his words act upon the hearts of the audience. What is the secret of hearing and chanting? A professional speaker cannot impress transcendental ecstasy within the hearts of the listeners. So this I experienced with Prabhupada. And I'm sure all of his disciples would say the same thing. Because if you look at those devotees who joined the movement, they were not coming from Vedic families. They were coming from Malecha Yavana families. So how was it that these fallen Malecha and Yavanas then became devotees, brahmanas, sannyasis? Here, because by Prabhupada's words, right, acts upon the hearts of the audience. That is how this movement, if you read that description of how this movement started, the description is there. And those first devotees, this is exactly what happened to them. Prabhupada's pure vibration touched their hearts, and this movement began. Just like that. Those early devotees, Prabhupada was able to touch their hearts. I even wrote that in one of my songs, how Prabhupada was able to influence the early devotees when this movement just started. Prabhupada's sound vibration, that's so correct. What is the secret of hearing and chanting? A professional speaker cannot impress transcendental ecstasy within the hearts of the listeners. I heard one of my godbrothers tell me that one time in the early days, 67, 68, Prabhupada was leading a kirtan once, and he said everybody in the audience was crying. However, when a realized soul who is engaged in the service of the Lord is speaking, he has the potency to inject spiritual life within the audience. One should therefore seek the association of such pure, unalloyed devotees, and by such association and service, a neophyte devotee will certainly develop attachment, love, and devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Padma Purana, there is the story of a neophyte devotee who, in order to raise herself to the ecstatic platform, danced all night to invoke the Lord's grace upon her. Sometimes, however, it is found that without undergoing any devotional process, one all of a sudden develops devotion for Lord Krishna. This sudden development of the devotional attitude in a person must be understood as a special mercy of Krishna or of his devotee. This apparently accidental development of ecstatic feelings through the causeless mercy of Krishna can be divided into three groups. Number one, simply by speaking. Number two, simply by glancing. And number three, simply by good wishes. In the Naradiya Purana, there is a statement about development of ecstatic love simply by speaking. Lord Krishna said to Narada, "O best of the Brahmanas, I wish that you may develop unalloyed devotional service to me, which is full of transcendental bliss and all auspiciousness." In the Skanda Purana, there is a statement about developing ecstatic love toward Krishna simply by glancing. It is stated there, when the inhabitants of Jangala province saw the personality of Godhead Krishna, they were so stricken with feeling that they could not withdraw their glance from him. As far as heartfelt wishes are concerned, there is a statement in the Shuka Samhita where Narada tells Śrīla Vyasadeva, "You have a son who is the greatest devotee of the personality of Godhead, and I can observe that without any following of the regulative principles of devotional service, he is already enriched with many of the symptoms achieved by the execution of devotional service after many, many births." As for ecstatic love of Krishna, there is a statement in the 7th canto, 4th chapter, verse 36 of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which Narada addresses King Yudhishthira. "Gunar alam asankyayar mahatmyang tasya suchyate vasudeve bhagavati yasya naisargiki rati." My dear king, it is very difficult to describe the character of Prahlad. He developed a natural attraction for Krishna, and whatever I can explain about his character will simply be an arrangement of words. His actual character is impossible to describe. So that verse appears in the Nrsinga Prahlad section, because that whole Nrsinga Leela is the first 10 chapters of the 7th canto. So there's one section where Narada explains to Yudhishthira all the attributes of Prahlad. And it is said in one of those descriptions that Prahlad, sometimes he would feel the hand of Krishna. So this Prahlad is unbelievable that he was so advanced. And that's why there's another chapter, one of those 10 chapters, that Prahlad, the best example of a devotee, is how the chapter goes. Best example of a devotee. This means that Narada himself admitted that the natural development of Prahlad's ecstatic love was by the grace of Lord Krishna. But we know from that section that Narada, first of all, saved Prahlad in the womb, because Indra and the demigods captured Hiranyakashipu's wife. Hiranyakashipu had went to perform austerities and penances, and Prahlad's mother, Kayadu, was pregnant. So Indra and the demigods, they captured her, and they were going to wait for her to give birth and kill the child, because they figured if the father's a demon, he must be a demon, which is normally the case, especially back in these days. But Narada stopped Indra, said, no, you cannot harm this child. He is already protected. So Indra and the demigods, they respected Narada. And Narada took the mother to his ashram and protected her. She said, look, while my husband is off doing austerities, I simply want to deliver my child. Narada said, I will give you protection. And while she was there in his ashram, he would preach to her. But as is stated by Prahlad, this is what Prahlad says. Prahlad said, my mother, she could not assimilate. She was